trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
To Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. Oh, we are going to dive into it here pretty quick. I kind of want to cover, Trump has basically put a Obamacare critic. Give me a second here. I'm trying to get all this up here. Give me a second. Here we go. Basically putting people in place that will either abolish or revamp Obamacare, and more than likely the health secretary and others that they are gunning for the Affordable Care Act, but what are they really reasonably going to do? Are they just going to take the existing bill and manipulate some stuff in it to serve purposes on their behalf? I believe that's what it'll come down to. It'll come down to reform that will benefit one side or the other, whether it be the pharmaceutical side or the insurance side or, government side. That's the direction I see a reform going, and I don't see a full repeal of Obamacare happening. But, we have to look for the things that will point to a reform that actually will benefit, the people in society, whether, everybody agrees with it or not, what is right and what is wrong. And, this also becomes a duality that, there's kind of a right side on both, and where is that middle ground? And the sad thing is we tend never to settle on the middle ground. One side will win over the other, and, we keep this, back and forth going. But if we were to see, a reform, what would it look like? Well, Ron Paul, Liberty Report today, he covered that. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. And then I have a couple articles here. So let's go ahead and cue that up there.
everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, and Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, very good. I guess you've been keeping an eye on all the appointments by our potential president, our president-elect right now.
Exactly.
And one of the most recent ones is very interesting. And it's interesting because the left's going nuts over it, you know, and it's the appointment of Tom Price to HHS. And this is interesting because, you know, that was an issue. Obamacare was the issue, a big issue in the campaign, and Trump took a pretty strong position. He said, you know, refine and change it. He didn't say just get rid of it. Yeah. It was to change it because it was so bad. But it's also interesting to reflect on the vote. When Obamacare came up, and this was sort of when the Tea Party movement was really in swing, and there were votes in the House and the Senate, and it was a strange thing. Every Republican voted against it. This was a Democrat thing, and actually the Republicans were pretty good early on in the Clinton administration when Hillary Care was offered. Oh, yeah. So, you know, we don't consider ourselves solidly in the conservative camp, more libertarian, but the conservatives have been pretty good on this. But with that said, I'm not super optimistic that all of a sudden we're going to have free market medicine. Of course, that would be my goal, is to get the government out of it. But Tom Price has been selected. He's a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon. And quite frankly, I've been in Congress for several terms with him. He's a very decent gentleman, and he's worked hard, you know, on the medical program and incorporates a lot of the suggestions that I have talked about. But he's also has to be, you know, listening to the establishment too. He won't be able to work in a vacuum, even if he say agreed with 99% of what I believe and that we share it, that's going to happen, because that's not the way the system works. So that'll have to be worked out. You know, the Democrats, the liberals, are hysterical because they have one goal, and that's a single party payment, and therefore that's up for grabs. So what were your thoughts when you heard Tom Price? You know a little bit about Tom Price, and we corresponded with him a lot, and he was a significant factor in the Republican Party while I was there.
Yeah, Dr. Price is tenacious. I think that's probably the best word to describe him. You know, they would go down to the floor every day and have their truth squad, and they would debunk things that they thought were false. And so I think he's very ambitious and very tenacious. I'm sure, as you point out, a divisive figure in the administration probably early on. But, you know, I think both sides have admitted that Obamacare is failing. I think President Obama himself said just a day or two ago, you did a column a couple of years ago, I guess, on this, and where you pointed out that, well, actually it was earlier this year, that several major insurance companies are already pulling out. There are areas of the country where you simply cannot purchase insurance now. It's not working. And then you say the fix, as you say, your opponents would say, some would say more penalties for those that don't buy in. The others would say we need a single payer system, but you've always had a different approach.
Yeah, that is for sure. And I wonder about the chaos. If you're really into conspiracy, some people claim, whether it's foreign policy or domestic policy, the opposition to us won't necessarily object to chaos. And some accuse them of doing it deliberately. Others accuse them of just making use of it. So if there's chaos and nobody likes the program, some might argue, well, see, that's why we need the Canadian system, one-party payer, you know, and the argument. But right now, it doesn't seem like the sentiment of the people are with that viewpoint, and they're obviously leaning toward, you know, a better option. Now, we want to talk, at least mention, three things that we might suggest.
Yeah, you're going to try to help out Dr. Price.
We'll make these suggestions, and I'll tell you what, I think if he'd accidentally come across this, he might at least listen to it. I mean, he's that kind of person. But one thing that we hear a lot about is the access to insurance. And it's less competitive because there are restrictions on cross-state line borders. You just can't go and buy it. And this has made it more difficult and more expensive. And I think Obamacare was actually, helpful to the insurance companies because you were forced into it, and they got a lot of new customers. And I think they were led to believe that they could charge what they wanted because they were getting close to monopoly control of it. But it turned out that when this system works, that prices go up. And they're now, one of the things that was involved in the campaign were raising these rates.
Yeah.
And so, but one thing I'm convinced that the insurance for medical insurance is not market oriented. Instead of getting prices down, if you look at car insurance and some other things, there's a lot more competition for getting rates on life insurance. I think is very competitive, but not medical insurance. And once again, the government's overly involved in it. So I think, and I think this is something that Tom would be very sympathetic to, and I think that's part of his program, is make insurance more available, and people we're supposed to trade, within the 50 states. That was one of the reasons we had the Interstate Commerce Clause, but. I don't quite know how that all came about, but you hear the complaints all the time. If they could only sell across borders, it would be more competitive, and that's what we need in medicine is more competition. And we need to go in the opposite direction of a one-party pay system.
So number one is make cross-border insurance more readily available. Now, how would that help me? Say I'm a guy sitting in California, I'm looking to buy medical insurance. How would liberalizing that help me, do you think?
Well, I think what would happen is all of a sudden they're going to be advertising in all states, and they're going to be inviting you to get insurance elsewhere, and you probably won't even notice it's coming from a different state. I think it'll be readily available, but probably not under these conditions because our government has forced everybody into the system. If you don't join, I heard of one case recently where the wife had the insurance and they were well covered, and the man of the family. Had a good job, but when it came to the insurance, he says, I don't need it. I already have it. Well, he got fined. They call it a tax. Of course, Roberts says the only way this can be constitutional, we have to call it a tax. It can't be a penalty. You can't be penalized for not buying something. So he had to pay $600 with a so-called tax. So it's not available. This isn't available, but to help correct this, that would be one of the important things. Make the insurance companies more competitive. Don't give them any advantages, because when it looks to medical reforms, insurance companies and drug companies and the medical industry and doctors and hospitals, they're generally, with the reforms because they're always going to get more money, and they're not free market oriented either. So this puts more pressure on the insurance companies to be competitive. But I think if you were in California and we were buying and you got rid of these mandates and things, I think all of a sudden the price of insurance would come down. Maybe you could mold your insurance. Your deductibles would be different. Maybe you wouldn't be forced to buy OB insurance, or somebody who's 65 years old and they're forced to buy OB insurance and pay for birth control pills for teenagers and Planned Parenthood and all these things. That's where the problem comes from. So, of course, the theme of what we're going to be talking about here is markets work better than the government, and government regulations don't do very well.
So that's number one, and you mentioned mandates in your last sentence. So number two actually is mandates.
Yes, and the mandates I look at as one of the most crucial things to get rid of. You have to be able to opt out. No matter what the government has been doing to us for many, many years, if they say you must do this, you have no way out, I mean, that's dictatorship and that's enslavement. And I keep thinking that, in the early 80s, there was a move on, and a lot of the special court cases occurred here in Texas about you couldn't homeschool, and you couldn't have private schooling, and you had to have government regulations, and they fought it, and they won. So today, the government schools they don't have such a great reputation anymore. And so parents like you and your wife, you decide, well, we'll do something else. But what if they had a mandate that said you can't do it, that you have to send your kids to government schools? And that's what they're doing here. And I think when that happens, it's a very, very serious issue to deal with. And this might be one of the most inclusive mandates ever in this economic planning that we've been involved with way too long, and they force people into it. So get rid of the mandates. And that was something we have to give the Republicans credit for. Back when it was being passed, they said, don't put these mandates on. And it turns out that mandates are horrible. Mandates mean compulsion. Compulsion means you're enslaved. It means a dictatorship. It means higher prices and less quality. And believe me, you don't have to go too far to find out there's higher costs, and people complain all the time. The lines are as long, if not longer, than ever before.
Yeah, exactly. So get rid of the mandate is number 2. And now number 3 is sort of a multifaceted one. Your third suggestion that has to do with reintroducing market forces. And, you know, people are nervous about that because your health is sort of an emotional thing. You know, you're afraid, you tend to be afraid of the market. When you get sick, you want to be taken care of. And so I think that's a psychological burden.
Well, and I think you're sort of touching on the most important thing is market forces. People are fearful of them because they don't understand them.
Yeah.
If they really understood economics and what liberty is all about and how the greatest progress is made in a society that respects liberty and the greatest growth in economic benefits for the whole population, the middle class is the largest, they shouldn't be so fearful. But the problem comes that people who promote big government, you know, draw you in with bribes, you know, federal government, education, highways, or whatever. We'll give you money, we'll give you money. And then they have you by the tentacles and they'll say, all right, you do it our way or not. We're going to tell you how fast you can drive in. All these mandates and environmental mandates, everything going on. And the state said, we don't want to do it. We have states' rights. Of course, they sacrifice their rights by accepting the money. So then the government says, okay, if you want to have it your way, no more money. So, and then by that time, they're addicted to it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of constituents that then would say that they, don't want to give up their benefits. You better stick with it and work with the federal government. So what we need to do is get to a system where there's more market forces, and there are some things that can be done. And I think Tom Price is talking about it. Republicans have talked about it. We certainly talked about it a whole lot. We're health savings accounts.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's far from the perfect free market. But at least if you decided, or any individual decided that they want to have their own in-house insurance policy, that if you could put $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 into a savings account, and even though you're following the rules and say, well, I can spend that without a tax when my kids get sick, and I can pay cash for it. And, you know, that would help drive prices down if the doctors knew you were paying cash and there was no third-party payment. But you would get you wouldn't be paying tax on that. The other thing related to taxes would be just give a tax credit. So if you bought a policy or paid a physician a couple $100 for a visit, that you get a tax credit for this. You get to write that off your taxes, so the government management isn't there. All you do is put something in your returns, and you get that money back. But it would introduce the factor that you're paying cash. And believe me, this has an effect on doctors, labs, everybody else. If they know you're paying cash, even today with this mess we have, if individuals go and talk to the doctor himself and say, hey, look, you know, I do not have insurance, but I pay my bills. What will you do for me because I have to have such and such done? Most doctors will do that, but it's so much of a bureaucracy. Doctors have to work for corporations. The corporations have to work their way through this maze of paperwork. And the people who own these companies might tell the doctor, well, you can't give discounts, you know, this sort of thing. So that's one of the, the big problems that pushes prices up. I've argued that because I did practice for a few years with no Medicare and no Medicaid, hadn't even come in the early 60s. And what I remember is that there were more church hospitals. I worked in emergency rooms for essentially no money, and nobody was turned around, and doctors charged the least. But today, when they know there's a third party, even if it's just insurance, it causes the prices to go up. But, in spite of this, you have heard and you recall that I did an interview with Dr. Smith, who set up a clinic in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Under these circumstances. And the hospital he had like 20 or 30 doctors go with him. And they said, we're out of the system. No insurance, no government, no whatsoever. And he talked to us on the program and said, well, this operation generally costs $30,000. We'll do it for $3,000. What? Where's the markup?
Yeah.
But they probably didn't make quite as much money, but believe me, I bet they had a lot more personal satisfaction practicing medicine, and people were coming in. And now with the deductible so high, it's almost like, let me just pay cash for this thing. And that's why we need the competition. And one of the analogies I use about how we should change medicine is do it like we sell cell phone. Can you imagine if the Department of Homeland Security said, well, we have a threat from the outside, and this instrument called a cell phone, everybody has to have one for safety and security and to know, so we can also find out where you are all the time. But what if they had one entity and they set it up? We have to manufacture cell phones and distribute cell phones to everybody. Can you imagine what chaos that would be? Now, everybody has cell phones. They get cheaper, they get better, and they get smarter than the people that run the phones. And there's a lot of companies and a lot of competition, and prices go down, but nobody worries about getting a cell phone. But once you say, well, if you go to the doctor and you have to pay the bill, that's the end of the whole program. But they have been conditioned to know it's going to be very expensive, and that is the problem.
It's, so many on the left seem so afraid of the idea of making a profit. And so you see, in practical terms, increasing market competition brings costs down. The cell phone is a perfect example. Nobody had a cell phone when they first came out. No. Only the top, people.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so if they really want to help people, they would welcome the introduction of market forces to lower the costs.
I want to make 2 points, then we're going to have to go. But the one is technology, instruments, all the medical technology. It's amazing what has come out since I finished my residency just in OBGYN. A fantastic improvement. But everybody uses that as an excuse. The insurance company, well, this costs more money. X-ray machines cost more money. Well, why should it be? Because technology lowers the cost of everything else, except in medicine when the government is pricing things. So technology and this fancy equipment is not an excuse to raise prices. It should be a reason in a market to lower prices. And the one other thing I want to finish up with, because a lot of people suffer from this, is the influence of drug companies, the inability to get free pricing, market prices of medical products. And that is a mess, and it has to do with people being forced into insurance company, and then they make deals with the insurance company. But if you're trying to pay your own bills, you go, oh, no, well, you only pay $5 if you join that insurance company plan, but it's going to be $100 if you pay cash. That can't possibly be the market. And the drug companies, they were behind a lot of these things. Prescription drug programs, Republican program. So that's why I cautiously say that we hope we get some very, very good changes in medical care, but also know there's a great deal of influence with Republican big financiers who's in insurance business and in the drug business and the healthcare business. So we can't be overly optimistic that now with the election, everything is going to be just hunky-dory.
Well, here's 3 good starts, so we've done our part.
Very good. And I hope this information has been helpful to our viewing audience, and I would encourage you to come back soon to the Ron Paul Liberty Report.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, and Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out. Subscribe. Now, I think that, he pointed out, the major thing I think that we have to look at is the compulsion mandates where you're compelled to get it or face taxes, um, which is really a fine. They just go, well, you can't have a fine, but you can have taxes. So just reword it. Um, well, it's not a tax; it's a fine. It really is, because if that's the only thing you have to change is the wording, but it accomplishes all the same objectives, then it's still, a fine. Um, just by putting the IRS basically overseeing it, it's allowed to be put on as a tax. Now, there's a lot of people that don't use the modern healthcare system very often. I'm one of those people. I'm not saying all medicine's bad, um, but I don't like a lot of it. Too many relying on just these magical pills, um, and I don't see enough addressing of the actual issues. And now it's, offensive to try to address it sometimes. To say, hey, it might help if you get your weight down. It, you know, you hating on big people and blah blah. It's really actually pretty sad that we can't talk about health issues the same way without people thinking, well, we're hating on big people. It's not, you know, there's people that can be healthy and be a bigger person, but the obesity, I'm not talking about, just bigger people. I'm talking about the extreme obesity, um, putting large strains on those people's body. And, we're supposed to be so accepting, but at the same time, you want them to be healthier without it coming down on your shoulders. And if people choose to live certain lifestyles, hey, if you skydive every weekend, you're probably going to have to pay a higher premium because you're risking your life every weekend in that manner. But then you also have where, well, people that work in dangerous environments. There's compensation, and the free market can decide that. And I think actually a lot of people would be happier when the free market is deciding that. Not saying that it'll be great all the time, but um, again, it would be the market. And if you don't believe that you can influence the market as a society, look at non GMO foods, BPA free, plastic bottles. Look at the movements that have been inspired. And a lot of times, these companies spend all this money to try to prove their products to be safe, and in the end, they end up caving basically to what the market is craving. And now you do have maybe some companies that have used their labeling kind of dece- deceiving the customer. Um, but for the most part, there are a lot of companies out there that have been trying to move more and more into the natural, non-GMO, organic, um, category because that's what the market has said. This is what we want. And it did not take government approval. Now you have government USDA that labels the organic. They grabbed a hold of that label and they actually, own the rights to, if you want to sell something commercially as organic, it better be USDA certified. But they didn't get the label non-GMO. And one group that came out was the non-GMO project, and now you see their labels on, name brand food because this movement inspired, these labels go, hey, people are looking at you as, the leaders. What can we do to make sure our foods are, meeting your, non-GMO? It's got to be not genetically modified. Now you get that alongside not just the USDA organic, but now there's some other independent groups that have come out that some people are starting to rely more on rather than the USDA's, which I think this new group has a little bit stricter, requirements. And I forget, I've seen the label on a few products, excuse me. But, when you look at healthcare and having the mandate that you must have, this insurance or you pay the tax at the end of the year, the penalty tax, aka fine, it becomes, like Ron Paul pointed out, you become a slave to the system because now they have this control over this, the healthcare. Really, they have control where they can ask you about having guns. Will they ask you to be microchipped? Now, that's kind of, I haven't really looked too far into it, but I know that's kind of a argued point whether that's completely true. But when they start controlling, they control the mandates that the insurance companies have to abide by. Standards that they want the doctors to abide by, which for the doctors that do not deal with any of the insurance, cash only, for now can kind of dodge those certain Obamacare mandates because they're not a part of Obamacare. But what about when they start mandating that even if you choose to take the penalty at the end of the year, that you must at least submit one physical to prove that you've been to the doctor, that you are watching your health to make sure that you are not becoming a burden on society. Which we've all met some of those burdens on society, but a lot of these people could be damaged from something they've went through, whether it be childhood or a tragedy. We have to have some compassion to a point, but where does this system lead? And another thing with the whole cash, a cashless society really can be just around the corner. It doesn't have to be looked at as some far off thing. Um, finally there's more people talking about it. Um, but devaluing the money and forcing you to spend what you have instead of saving back. Limiting the size of the bills and amounts that you can spend in cash without going through a bank. Anything over a certain amount, let's say 5, 10 grand, would have to be done through a bank, no cash transactions. And forcing money into a bank, and then what could the Fed do? Now people are forced to go through banks. Oh, well, it's real easy. Now they all go through banks. We can go negative interest rates. Then money that you are trying to save back in the bank, if you don't spend it, it'll slowly disappear. Yeah, you can add on it, but you still lose money. If you stop adding on it, eventually it'll disappear. So, what do you do to fix that problem? A lot of it, you look at the monetary policy. I just, I just don't see Trump putting the right person into the spot. I could be wrong, um, but I think a lot of it's going to rely on the people that are realizing what's wrong with our monetary policy, and the Fedders that were out there, audit the Fed and the Fed, Ron Paul supporters, the anarcho-capitalists, the libertarians. We understand it, the Austrian economics. Um, we look at this whole picture. I think it's more evident that you should be looking at gold, silver, Bitcoin, property, food, you know, things that will have value. And when we see the point where you have to spend, you can't save, for those that, I might not want to work the rest of my life. Um, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and, buy something that can save money. And also, you also want to buy um, things that you might be able to make money off quicker. Um, buy rental property, or I understand a lot of people might not be in a position, but if you are in a decent position, that, and you have, the business um, capacity, you know, it might be something that, if you think you can get it off within about a year, year and a half, 2 years max, I think it would be worth the risk and investment. Um, because in an attempt to try to fix the next bubble, many people have said that it's time for a mini dip. And they said we haven't truly, never mind the stock market, we haven't truly come out of the last one. And they said a mini dip right now can make people panic and cause a major dip. And if that happens, you can bet that we will see what we've seen already start happening around the world. Okay, give me a second here. Okay, sorry, I'm having a browser issue here. Sorry. I'm supposed to be looking at a possible better internet connection, which it's hard where I live. Because I kept thinking it was my computer, which a couple times it was, but I'm really thinking it's the provider. Okay, they're back up. Okay, I'm going to play this one from We Are Change, the real truth behind Henry Kissinger and Donald Trump's relationship. And I found this pretty interesting. Some information that I wasn't quite sure, but I started kind of looking at what he was talking about. And, there's some questions I think that should be asked. So,
I just saw a top alternative independent news organization totally butchered this story with not an ounce of truth, with not an ounce of just compassion for its viewers, totally flip-flopping. So you know what? Let's talk about Donald Trump and Henry Kissinger. As we know, the two have recently met in New York to discuss the future of U.S. foreign policy, more specifically China, Russia, Iran, the European Union, and other events and issues around the world. Of course, this is an official statement from a private meeting that held no public records. As we know, Henry Kissinger and Donald Trump have been friends for a very long time and even had weeks of telephone conversations between each other when Donald Trump was running for president of the United States. Henry Kissinger has advised presidents on national security issues since JFK, and Barack Obama's own national security advisor said that he takes his daily orders from Dr. Kissinger. So you might be asking yourself, what's out of the ordinary? What's the problem here? Oh, yeah, Henry Kissinger is a top globalist scumbag who is a part of all the secret societies, Trilateral Commission, CFR, Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Grove, who has been pulling the strings of U.S. foreign policy for decades with his cohorts. And if you study U.S. foreign policy for the last few decades, it's not a good picture that was painted by Mr. Kissinger, his damn self. Donald Trump is colluding, is cuddling this old man, and even said that he takes his foreign policy advice from it, and that Henry Kissinger agrees with Donald Trump's foreign policy. Henry Kissinger was on CNN on Fareed Zakaria's show. Fareed Zakaria is also a Bilderberg member, and he had this to say.
Was of a determined president, a president-elect, who is making the transition from being a campaigner to being a national strategist.
AKA, he's coming away from being the person he promised he was to you into becoming a, quote, national strategist after just meeting with Henry Kissinger. He goes on.
The challenges and opportunities for a President Trump.
Well, this president-elect, it's the most unique that I've experienced in one respect. He has absolutely no baggage.
AKA, I never had to deal with this crap before because he's not a part of any secret society and we have no blackmail on him. As it was confirmed by Newt Gingrich, who on Fox News said that the establishment is scared of Donald Trump because he's not a part of any secret societies. And again, secret societies like Bohemian Grove and Skull and Bones get dirt on very powerful people, and then they use that dirt in order to extort them. And that's exactly what Henry Kissinger is putting in context.
The impact of globalization. And I wrote minor things about that earlier. Not enough attention was paid to the fact that it was bound to have winners and losers, and that the losers were bound to try to express themselves in some...
AKA all the globalist, tyrannical, free trade, war policies that I have been pushing on the American public when I had my fingertips on U.S. foreign policy, there was a reaction to that, and that elected Donald Trump because Donald Trump was speaking out against that when he was running for president.
Kind of political reaction. In my view, in the present situation, one should not insist on nailing him into positions that he had taken in the campaign on which he doesn't insist. If he insists on them, then of course disagreements will become expressed.
Fareed Zakari then goes on and says, are you suggesting that Donald Trump should flip-flop? Duh! That's exactly what Henry Kissinger is freaking talking about. And we could see Donald Trump. He vowed to repeal Obamacare on the campaign trail, but he has since softened his rhetoric. He has claimed that he would persecute Hillary Clinton, but now he is saying that he doesn't want to, quote, hurt her, and he has avoided confirming any such plans when she broke the law. Why would this happen after a meeting with Henry Kissinger? Oh, yeah. Henry Kissinger and Hillary Clinton have a very, very, very personal relationship. They vacation together at beachfront villas. Hillary Clinton publicly called him a friend and that she, quote, relied on Henry Kissinger for counsel when she was Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013. She said, quote, he checked in with me regularly, sharing astute observations about foreign leaders and sending me written reports. This is Hillary Clinton admitting that Henry Kissinger was pulling the strings on her. To make the situation worse, Kissinger said this.
On which he doesn't insist. If he insists on them, then of course disagreements will become expressed.
There's going to be disagreements. What do you think that means, especially from a war criminal? Henry Kissinger prolonged the Vietnam War for 5 pointless years. He illegally bombed Cambodia and Laos just on his own volition. He goaded Nixon to wiretap staffers and journalists. He was responsible for 3 genocides in Cambodia, East Timor, and Bangladesh. He urged Nixon to go after Daniel Ellsberg, a journalist, for having released the Pentagon Papers, which again set off the whole chain of events which brought down Richard Nixon. He again pumped up Pakistan's ISI and encouraged it to use it politically as with Islam to destabilize Afghanistan. He began U.S. arms for petrodollar dependency with Saudi Arabia and pre-revolutionary Iran. He accelerated needless civil wars in southern Africa that, in the name of supporting white supremacy, left millions dead. He supported coups and death squads throughout Latin America, and he integrated himself with the first-generation neocons such as Dick Cheney and Paul Wolfowitz that took the throne and launched the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. He had his fingers on Hillary Clinton when she went into Libya. He had his fingers on Barack Obama when he went after Syria. He is the man responsible for horrible war crimes. I confronted this man one-on-one for his criminal, illegal behavior that he should be behind bars with. And then he said, I'm a coward for calling him out. You can watch this video. It's going to be in the description below. Just click the description. Sources, go all the way down. The video, the YouTube links, watch me. I confronted him 4 times. I even confronted him on Memorandum 200, National Security Letter, where he openly talked about how population growth in the third world was a grave threat to U.S. national security and how there should be a covert plan to reduce populations with birth control and also war and famine. This is the man who, at the end of this interview, which you could watch, said that the United States was a bastion for peace and prosperity around the world. What? And now, when another independent alternative media organization takes this entire program and uses it as a way to prop up Trump, and I'm like, wait, hold on, what are you doing? Now, to be fair, we still don't know exactly what's going to happen with Donald Trump. He's not even president yet. But I'm seeing the warning signs, and I'm going to scream it off the top of my lungs with a bullhorn because that's what I'm here to do. People are not going to like this video, but you know what? That's fine because I'm doing this for truth. I'm doing this because it matters more to tell you exactly what's happening than to manipulate you in order to push your perceived bias. And I could only do that because of your support on patreon.com/wearechange, which makes me accountable to you since you financed this entire operation.
WeAreChange.org, We Are Change on YouTube, subscribe. And you know, when you see people that Trump has been surrounding himself by, you know, we see, you know, Kissinger, Romney, you know, Gingrich, even though not so much, but Chris Christie was a part, you know. It's everybody that the voters said that they were voting for Trump to be against. Congratulations. He just surrounded himself by them. You know, it would be different if you started seeing, you know, Ted Cruz, Justin Amash, you know, Rand Paul, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Of course, we know none of this is going to happen. Again, it's a politics game. Let's go with the establishment because they've held control. Many people believe he'll be able to get more done because of what you know, Kissinger said there. He doesn't have the baggage, and you know, Luke pointed out that, you know, they don't have the blackmail like they would on other candidates that they push. Um, I'm sure there's some blackmail out there, but you know, it's going to be hard for the other side to say, well, if you do that, we'll expose this. Now that might come later on. Um, we'll have to see. But right now, I just I'm trusting him less and less. But again, we'll see what happens. Again, I'm not a supporter of his at any extent, but I tend to judge people on their actions rather than their words. Um, and again, he's not even president yet, even though we have people on the left claiming that he's already taken away the freedom of people. Well, he hasn't done anything yet, but get elected. So not sure exactly what they're talking about. Okay, I had an article here from Reason.com. Keep hearing the high pitch sound. Hopefully, it's nothing. Okay, let me get it back up here. As my dog sleeps on the office floor, dreaming. Oh, come on. Okay. Now, I think this is more of a PR, stunt because, well, let's just say you've had the administration for 8 years. Your guys were in charge, and we still seen the Fed, go after, these marijuana companies. We haven't seen really any push for legalization, but you want to try to predict the future and leave a legacy that in the future you'll be looked at as that person that was thinking ahead. On his way out the door, Obama suggests marijuana should be legal. In a new interview with Rolling Stone, President Obama comes as close as he ever has to endorsing marijuana legalization, saying, I am not somebody who believes that legalization is a um, panacea, but I do believe that treating this as a public health issue the same way we do with cigarettes or alcohol is a much smarter way to deal with it. Tobacco and alcohol, of course, are not prohibited by state or federal law, so the implication is that marijuana shouldn't be either. But Obama apparently is waiting until he leaves office to say so explicitly. I will have the opportunity as a private citizen to describe where I think we need to go, but in light of these um, referenda passing, including in California, I've already said that it is um, untenable over the long term for the Justice Department or the DEA to be enforcing a patchwork of laws where something that's legal in one state could get you 20 years in prison, a 20-year prison sentence in another. So this is um, a debate that is now right, much in the same way that we ended up making progress on same sex marriage. There's something to the whole states being laboratories of democracy and an evolutionary approach. You now have about a fifth of the country where this is legal. And it goes on to talk about they think Obama's going to push it as a private citizen. We'll see. He might go around running his mouth about something. We'll see how much actual, you know, publicity it gets. Now, talking about the economy, Trump and Carrier announced deal to keep 1,000 jobs in Indiana. Donald Trump has brokered a deal with Carrier to save nearly 1,000 of 1,400 jobs that the HVAC company planned to move from Indiana to Mexico. And actually, the number I got was 2,000. And this is out of InfoWars by Dan Lyman. Carrier made the agreement public last night on Twitter, stating, "We are pleased to have reached a deal with President-elect Trump and VP-elect Pence to keep close to 1,000 jobs in Indy. More details soon." A formal announcement of the plans is scheduled to take place on Thursday in Indiana, with Trump and Vice President-elect Pence in attendance. And it has tweets from Donald Trump there. Possible resolutions to ongoing negotiations were made evident when Trump tweeted on November 24th, "I'm working hard even on Thanksgiving trying to get Carrier AC Company to stay in the U.S. Indiana. Making progress, we'll know soon." A central focus on Trump's campaign has been on American jobs and protecting them from moving internationally. After Carrier declared in February its decision to relocate a large portion of its U.S. operation to Mexico, Trump sees the opportunity to use Carrier as a topical, high-profile example of how globalization hurts American workers. Now, I've talked about this in the whole globalization movement, and the Agenda 21, and now it's become Agenda 2030. Um, and depending on where you are, if you're near a decent sized city, you might be hearing plans for some of the names is 2020, 2025, Um, and then 2030, I've seen, I think, once um, outside of the UN. Um, and I've also seen, the path to 1 million or the road to 1 million, um, meaning they're trying to, reach a goal of so many citizens within the limits. And some of that also involves annexing rural areas and taking control. Definitely, if there's areas that they can turn into, these nature preserves and things like that, which, you know, I've seen it happen, here in Indiana. And when you look at all of that going on, I, I'm almost convinced that the reason you're seeing everything, for the most part, leave America, it, this is definitely, one of those conspiracy theories. Just, me pondering all these scenarios of things going on. And, when I start pondering things, I look for the, most logical, the, also, the most mainstream view. And I look at, the most conspiratorial, you know, and then shoot, they all could be aliens. No, not really, but I'm sure that'll be taken as a soundbite. But it becomes one of those things that you look at and it's like, what do they want America to be? The playground for the elites? And actually, they have done that because there are reports. Drudge has covered a whole bunch of mainstream reports that he's posted the headlines on Drudge Report about the elite and the you know rich people moving away from the city. Even though you think of, well, in New York, they live in high rises and they have whole floors to themselves or multiple floors. Trump has his golden penthouse, at the top of Trump Tower. But what we're also seeing more of, and I know it's not just happening here. I know it's happening across the United States, and most people, when you start talking about, go, yeah, it's happening here too. Yeah, yeah, it's happening here. Um, what you're seeing is these extremely wealthy, ambitious developers that want to make these ultra high rich communities. And they're building these houses on, 2, 3 acres, but it's an addition, but they're on 2 or 3 acres. And gated, community, or, but they're building, mansions. These things, depending on where you are, can go for a lot of money. And, places like Indiana where real estate can actually be pretty cheap and you can find really nice, rural areas that are just, scenic. And you have like areas that have some rolling hills and some, woods, and then they come through and all of a sudden, sections of a creek. You can find this in Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. The creek now is a waterway, and then they you know claim authority over more area, and then they go, well, this can flood out, and that, you know what, this whole area is a watershed, and watersheds, now we can claim this much. And these are rules that themselves right, so they just make the rules up anyways. But they go, this is watershed. We'll just put a nice raised platform walkway through here, and we'll make it part of, the bike trail, the walking trail. The we'll connect the whole city. And then you go, well, you see all these communities that pop up where they're mansions. And this is now city limits. Well, then the even richer, ultra rich, move outside of the city limits. They're sitting on 500 acres, 600 acres, 1,000 acres, 1,500 acres. With multi-million-dollar mansions. And at the same time, all the people that don't want to give up their property or don't want to sell out, they love where they live. Well, now the value of that property is more than the value of their house, because the people that are going to buy it are going to put a house on it that will be 100 times the value of their house. So for them to pay more than what the house and the property originally was worth is worth it now. Where do those people usually go? Well, they go, well, I got more than what that was worth. Well, that's because maybe the house is old. It needed remodeled. If it was remodeled, it would have been worth more. But, but hard times, people aren't remodeling their homes like they used to. And now they tend to, move closer in more urban area. Because, well, now they found a house, an older edition, but it's closer into the city. But this was a nice addition, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It was a super richie. Then you find out that, well, it's kind of gotten trashy. You start seeing that, well, all these houses within that addition are now getting run down within 5-10 years of living there. That's not a nice addition anymore. This cycle happens over and over and over. But the rate that it's happening and what's going on seems more like the centralizing of the people into the city. And the people that go along with the system that can make it because they go along with it end up benefiting. It's becoming that class warfare that you read in novels. And it seems to be becoming realer and realer by the day. Now, I want to get to something here. Sorry, I'm reloading these clips here. Oh, it was pretty funny because they have started, YouTube has started putting Alex Jones videos under entertainment. Yes, Alex Jones is now being put under entertainment recommendations. Which the only time I ever seen anything with, a politician or something, it was like a late night program where now they're just putting quite a few weird things. They even have CNN promo attacks Alex Jones, like they're laughing at him how mad he's getting. We're already at 7:15, 7:16. Wow. Kind of flew through that. Well, give me a second here. We'll get into this real quick. Come on. Sorry, guys. Try to get this up as quick as possible. So, a quick clip from Ben Swan. Here we go. Oh, what is going on there? Everything just froze up. Come on. Sorry, guys. Okay. Maybe. Sorry, guys. Hoping this wouldn't be a problem today. It's working great all day. Okay. Now, we've heard some complaining from the left about Trump getting elected. The Electoral College, and I've been hearing this since he's been elected, and when I still hear people talking about it, it really kind of irritates me because you realize if the Electoral College existed, then literally the coastal states would be in charge. You realize, California, New York, maybe Florida, Texas. Texas would be kind of even a little less swaying. I want to play this reality check planning Electoral College for a compromise candidate, not Trump. This was 2 weeks ago, but I wanted to play this real quick.
Well, in at least 12 cities across the country, protests are taking place, including here in Atlanta, over the election of Donald Trump. thousands of people in New York, Portland, Chicago, LA, and again here in Atlanta, saying that because Trump lost the popular vote, he is an illegitimate president. But reality check, we don't elect presidents by popular vote. We do it through the Electoral College. And that might actually be bad news for Donald Trump if the Electoral College chooses to block him from becoming the 45th president of the United States. Can they do it? Well, yes. And right now, an effort is underway not to elect Trump. But to understand that, you have to understand how the Electoral College works. This is a reality check you won't see anywhere else. Well, last week's election left 120 million Americans feeling one way or the other, either delighted that Donald Trump won the election or furious and heartbroken. Now, part of the frustration is over the fact that Trump lost the popular vote. At last count, Hillary Clinton received at least 600,000 more votes than Trump, and that number could be much higher, as about 4 million votes in California are still being counted. But that doesn't matter because Trump won the Electoral College by winning 290 electoral votes compared to Clinton's 228. In order to become president, you have to get 270 electoral votes, and Trump got them. Well, actually, he didn't get them yet. See, the Electoral College is more than just a map and numbers. When you go to vote for president, you think you're voting for a candidate, but you're not. You're actually voting for electors in every state, members of the Electoral College. Now, here's something you may not know. In 21 states in the country, including right here in Georgia, these electors are not required to vote for the candidate who won the popular vote in their state. It doesn't happen often. But on occasion, Electoral College members will cast a vote for someone other than the candidate who won the election in their state. These are called faithless electors. The most recent was in 2004 when a faithless elector defected, and instead of casting their vote for John Kerry, they instead cast their vote for his running mate, John Edwards. It was only symbolic, though, because George W. Bush had the votes needed to become president. And faithless electors have a constitutional right to vote however they choose. Under the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, electors have a right to vote as he or she choose in the Electoral College. Now, I tell you all of that because right now there is an effort underway to convince the Electoral College to choose a different president than Donald Trump on the 19th of December. Last week, I was contacted by one of the electors from Colorado, Michael Baca. Michael explains that he and other electors are putting into action an effort to persuade Republican electors to defect from Donald Trump and to choose a compromise candidate. Because right now, Clinton has 268 electors and Trump has 290. Baca is hoping to convince at least 21 electors to vote for a compromise candidate, Ohio Governor John Kasich. Baca believes that Kasich, who's still a Republican, a conservative, and is largely seen as a reasonable man, would be someone that most Americans would support. Now, for this all to work, all of Clinton's electors would have to vote for Kasich, and 21 Republican electors would have to cross over. Furthermore, if Baca could convince all of 18 Ohio electors to support their own governor, then in fact he'd only need 3 other electors from around the country to switch their vote. All right, so what you need to know here is that number one, the likelihood of this happening is not great. It's never happened before. Number two, if it's going to happen, it could happen now, considering that nearly half of registered voters did not vote in this election. And number three, while many people would not like the outcome, it is actually a completely legal process in our American system. But why is that? Well, in the Federalist Papers, Alexander Hamilton actually explains why electors in the Electoral College have this power. He writes this, quote, "Talents for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity may alone suffice to elevate a man to the first honors in a single state, but it will require other talents and a different kind of merit to establish him in the esteem and the confidence of the whole Union." He goes on to say, "A small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general mass will be the most likely to possess the information and the discernment requisite to such complicated investigations." In other words, in plain English, the point of the Electoral College is not to actually override the will of the popular vote. It's to protect against a candidate who manages to get enough votes to take office and yet would not be good for the nation. Hey, hold on. I didn't create the Electoral College. The founders did. The question for electors in 2016, who, by the way, are using the hashtag Hamilton electors, well, the question for them is how will they use this power with which they have been legally and constitutionally vested? That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that on Twitter.
Now, I think they'll do that? I really don't see them actually doing that. Not enough support would go through, I don't believe, for that to happen. But again, like he said, like, many other alternative media has pointed out, it probably won't happen, but it could. And just because you don't believe something will happen, we know it's not a good enough excuse to ignore it and point things out like that. It's not to say they're they're going to steal the election from Donald Trump. No, I really, I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. Um, but it's information that most people don't even understand the electoral college. So it becomes something that every year it really has to be explained. The more people that are intrigued enough to decide to, hey, I'm going to go vote for this. I want to be a voter. Well, they're they're going to be like, well, she got more votes. Why did he win? I don't understand. Well, we kind of need a little bit more teaching of the electoral college after high school, because I just don't think anybody listened to it during high school, but a very few people that for some reason at a very young age decide they want to become politicians. I don't know. Um, but it doesn't seem that many people have read the Federalist Papers, even our own Constitution. And, these are the people that you hear going, Constitution's too old. We need to get rid of it. Well, if we didn't adhere to the Constitution, we just looked at the Constitution as this cool thing on the wall, you wouldn't even be allowed to say that. Because, well, you would be talking bad about that cool thing that we prize on the wall. But because we actually believe in what it says there, you're able to say how much you dislike the Constitution. A foreigner like Pierce Morgan has been able to come over here and, try to chastise us about our gun rights. So it allows for freedom, even a freedom that can be annoying or offensive to some. And it's funny because these people the left has gone around offending the hell out of conservatives and the right and gun owners and, who else. It's funny because they at the same time are chastising the people that say, hey, we believe in your right to speak this way, even though we don't find it flattering and we kind of find it offensive, but you have the right to say these things. I can't take that from you. But those same people are crazy because they believe in your right to be able to say these things. So we see the hypocrisy from the left, and we get that from the right too all the time too. The right's not immune to it at all. Kind of white. Not really. I think it's the amateur thing to do is to jump in party lines, or it's a strategical political move to jump in these parties. Because as you're seeing with Trump already, there's a lot of hypocritical stuff that goes on. And it just proves that within that two-party system, no one's immune. That's the game. That's how it's played. And if you don't play it, you don't get in. And I think Donald Trump has played the political game. Said what he, look at George Bush, what he ran on, the last George Bush. Small government, we need to bring down government, stop regulation, and blah blah blah, and stop policing the world. What happened after he got in office? Not that. So I think with a little bit of critical thinking, I think that we understand exactly why maybe the two-party system is not a good idea. This is something the Founding Fathers warned us about. We evidently didn't feel like listening. And I kind of like how Ron Paul puts it better, that we really have a one-party system. I really believe that is where we're at. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of issue. Again. Okay. Last clip I'm going to play for the night. This is why globalism hates Donald Trump. Now, that's one thing that I'm not, is a big nationalist. I have a little bit of the, cultural nationalism, but not the right now nationalism. It's kind of hard to explain. I respect history and, everything you can learn from it. And I respect culture, but I also believe in some progressive things, even though I tend to be more conservative. It's hard to label yourself anymore, or try to describe yourself anymore because of, again, I've covered this, how labels have been changed. And globalism, you know, at one time you could ask a libertarian, they'd probably say, yeah, I believe in a globalism, that, you know, you don't believe in government control, and, you know, at one point governments were constantly trying to expand their borders. Same with states. You know, at one point the states were trying to draw their borders. But now globalism really is a code word for, you know, a government, a centralized global government, which centralizing government and power into the hands of a very few, rather than more community-based, self-governing, is the opposite of a libertarian idea of, you know, global freedom. So let's dive in this. Christopher Green, AMTV, Why Globalism Hates Donald Trump. And this is probably going to be more about his nationalism.
Check out the AMTV store right now. Click the link below or visit store.amtvmedia.com. Get all of our ProPure water filtration systems and products across the board 25% off. That's 25% off for this holiday sale. Check out the ProPure Big. Filter up to 2.75 gallons worth of clean, sparkling, crisp, great tasting water. Filters out contaminants, even fluoride. Get yours today. That's 25%, folks, across the board on all ProPure water filtration systems and products. Click that link. Hey, everybody. I'm Christopher Green. You're watching AMTV, Alternative Media Television. It is, of course, November 29, 2016. I want to wish every single one of you a happy holiday and Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for tuning in and everything that you do. Today's video, you'll learn why globalism hates Donald Trump. In fact, all you have to do is read the recent issue of The Economist. You'll see the new nationalism with the beautiful picture of Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Nigel Farage. If you read the article, it goes on to say basically that Donald Trump is a KKK member, the next Hitler, as well as Vladimir Putin. Why are the globalists positioning Donald Trump in this light? And why do they hate him so? Why do they hate the Don? We see Donald Trump is actually pro-American. Vladimir Putin is pro-Russia. Nigel Farage is pro-his country. And that's not what the globalists want. You see, the globalists have an intricate web. They call it the New World Order. You can call it the power structure. You can even call it the Illuminati. But they want to control everything through a totalitarian control system and network. And it starts with our currency. It starts with the Federal Reserve and the manipulation of our money system. You see, the Federal Reserve is a private entity. It creates wealth from nothing. You see, it's not real wealth because it's backed by nothing. Not a commodity, not gold, not even an algorithm like the digital currency Bitcoin and competing digital currencies. The New World Order agenda is to decimate borders and to integrate the global economy country by country. Why do you think George Soros has been funding these operations? Why do you think he's been destroying borders in Europe and here in the United States? Because it's a hijacking, or at least an attempt, a Manchurian presidency that we just saw through Barack Obama and what they were hoping for to seal the deal with Hillary Clinton. But it didn't work because they underestimated the power of a revolution. They underestimated you. It still loves your country, still loves the Constitution, still loves America. And it's exactly why there's been a giant FU in the UK, for example, and also the United States. We've had the Brexit, and then we've had the Brexit on steroids with the election of Donald J. Trump. I mean, they spent into oblivion. Think about it for a minute. Hillary Clinton had the entire establishment behind her. Millions and millions of dollars funneling in from Wall Street, and she still lost. The Clinton News Network supporting her entire campaign, and she still lost because they underestimated you. So the question is, what are they going to do now, folks? What are they going to do now? Are they going to sit quietly through the night, so to speak, or are they going to act? It's exactly why we have a new McCarthyist-era Red Scare witch hunt occurring in this country right now. It's why the Washington Post and independent think tanks have called and labeled alternative media television fake news and an asset of the Kremlin and Mother Russia, which is kind of hilarious. I was thinking about the other day, I didn't even know this. I didn't know that AMTV was a Russian propaganda asset until the Washington Post said so. You see, they're so fearful and they're losing so badly. The only response that they have is to demonize. And it's exactly what we've got now, a demonization campaign. It's the new "you're a witch," and it's exactly what they're doing. The powers that be are losing control. They're losing control of the media. They're losing control of Wall Street. They're losing control of their agenda, and they don't like it. So, folks, I warned about this years ago. I told you that this was coming. I told you that there would be a witch hunt on truth, which is exactly what we have now. It's why they're painting all of us like we're a bunch of freaking communists now when we're not, or we're a bunch of Russian propaganda assets when we're not. You see, they're just pissed because they're getting their ass kicked. You see, folks, you have to understand that this is a war between good and evil. Totalitarianism, globalism versus nationalism versus America first or Europe first or any country around the world first. That is what we're fighting here. And that is why it is so important that we recognize now that even though Donald Trump has won, we're just getting started in this so-called war. We have so much work to do. We are rolling up our sleeves. We are fighting back. They are going to attempt, the globalists are going to attempt to structure a financial crisis and blame it on Donald Trump. They're going to try and escalate war and blame it on Donald Trump. They are going to wage war against the media. They're going to wage war against you. But I suggest, and I think, that they'll fail because I believe that the truth will prevail. And I think that it's prevailing now. We must all remain vigilant, folks. We must understand the big picture here. Understand the agenda of these radicals, of these banksters, the powers that be, the New World Order elite that pull the puppet strings. These people will stop at nothing. You see, these globalists don't care about you, folks. They don't care about you, your family, your children, your livelihood. It's why they've eradicated the middle class. It's why they stole from you in 2008, 2009. It's why they control the indoctrination system that makes up the mainstream media today. They will stop at nothing. It's why we need your support. It's why you need to keep fighting. You need to keep shining the light on the truth, sharing videos like these with your friends and family, because the war has just begun. And we, the alternative media, are just getting started. I'm Christopher Green. I'd like to hear what you think. Put your comment, question in the box below. You're watching AMTV, alternative media television, hard-hitting it in your face. Click the link below. Visit our store.amtvmedia.com. Get all of our ProPure systems 25% off. Massive holiday sale. Check it out right now. Peace.
Now, I tend to look at things a little bit different and from a different point of view because I've done other research that maybe some of the self-proclaimed, the non-self-proclaimed, the ones that are just being kind of pointed at as alt-right, other ones that are, you know, am I alt-right? I don't know. There's a manipulation, and I've talked about it, you know, multiple times about why I told people kind of stay away from the term alt-right. But even beyond that, what I've also seen is there is a propaganda kind of it's a outside force propaganda that has creeped its way into some of the alternative media that tends to lean right. Some that have been somewhat Tea Partyist or libertarian, and that alt-right has also kind of engaged with that extreme, what has been for, you know, decades and decades, a very left group has manipulated some of them to go ahead and vote Republican. And it's because they are the nationalists of maybe some of the same ideology, but they don't want globalism. And all of this has been played across the globe. It's not just here in our election. It's happening worldwide. And again, I think it's really a planned effort for divide and conquer. And I think it's working. And then on top of it, things that we've already talked about tonight, cashless society and making it where you can't have big bills, you can't pay for cash for anything over a certain amount. You have to go through a bank and it all be digitized, and then negative interest rates. So then, let's say, you put money in the bank. If you just leave it sit there, of course, you're not going to have anything left. We're going to see a system that finalizes something that we've already seen going on when it comes to your smartphone, laptops, tablets, internet, TV, your lights, smart meters, smart homes, smart cities, smart lamps, everything that we're doing, credit cards. When certain mechanisms are put in place, you will find yourself in total enslavement before you know what's happened. And the cashless society is one of those final strokes. Something that we've learned if you really paid attention to foreign news. There's a certain country that foreign news has been pretty astonishing on. And it's India. Now going where you can't use bigger bills in a certain amount. They're making it, forcing people in a bank. Negative interest rates are, going to be there. They also had biometrics, nationwide biometrics where everybody was iris scanned, fingerprinted, pricked with the needle, vaccinated. Total enslavement. You literally become livestock. And they have systematically done this in India. Of course, what do they claim? Overpopulation. Now, India does have extremely high population. Overpopulation is whose issue? Does this mean that if an area is overpopulated, that some dictatorial entity gets to decide, to treat these people as livestock? Does this lead to eugenics? You have horror movies out like The Purge. Does this become reality? When you become livestock, what say do you have? Right now is the time to start preparing while we, have a chance. One site I like using is Amazon. UCY has partnered with Amazon. If you go to ucy.tv, click the Amazon button towards the bottom of the page, home page. Shop Amazon through ucy.tv. You get the same great deals, same great shipping rates, and at the same time, UCY gets a little kickback to help cover operating costs. Great, selections from Amazon. Anything you really want, you can find there, and you can find all kinds of great prepping gear. And it's really important that people just. I know you can't afford everything. You can't prepare for every possibility, but if you can do a little bit, it prepares you for, economic or natural disaster, any man-made or natural disaster. Um, it's very important to prepare yourself, and at the same time, you're helping out alternative media, which actually is trying to warn people of the circumstances and the effects that come out of these policies. So it's really important to support alternative media, and you can prep and do the same. Um, Go to ucy.tv, click the Amazon button, and another thing is other commodities you can have: gold and silver. Some people can't afford gold. Silver is more attainable, and you can get the same effects out of it. Um, but it's really a hedge against the hyperinflation that I believe is right around the corner. Um, Hopefully, I am wrong. But hyperinflation, negative interest rates, all this is possible, but it all depends on what the elite plan to do, where they want America to go from here, and how they're going to manipulate the markets more. Because we don't have a true free market system. Um, we have a corporate and banker system that has totally I would say have become too greedy, and I think there are aspects of both that have become too greedy, and then there's others that have known that the outcome's not going to be good, but they're beyond greedy. They are addicted to power. And I don't know which one's worse, the people that go along to benefit themselves, or the people that are going and basically manipulating and planning everything to gain power. Gold and silver, I think, are one aspect of preparing. Again, I've always said don't put all your eggs in one basket. Look at all kinds of things. Again, property. But gold and silver are things that are great for hedging. Really, all commodities that can hold value or produce value. My choice for gold and silver is Amagi Metals. If you go to antityrannynews.com/metal, that'll take you to Amagi Metals. Great prices, and same great deals that you would normally get through them. And at the same time, Anti-Tyranny News gets a little kickback to help cover our operating costs on our end. And Amagi Metals, one thing I've liked about them is they've also covered a lot of freedom related metals and coins. So check them out, or should I say, just ounce billets or whatever. I don't know. Check them out though. Amagi Metals, my choice for gold and silver, and really some of the best prices I've found around the web and why I've settled with them. They also accept Bitcoin, so if you've been, putting Bitcoin back, there you go. You can put more of your eggs in a few different baskets, not just Bitcoin. And again, not just gold and silver, but make sure you have a little bit. And if you got the money, a lot of it. Now, again, I've said that we've got to watch what Trump actually does. We have to look at the people that he's put in the places and also what they do in those places. I think Secretary of State is one of the big things. Fed chair, all of this. Is Kissinger going to be around? Foreign policy, Council on Foreign Relations, where are his advisors coming from? Where are all of these people rooted in? And it's telling me it's big government. What I'm seeing, not all of it, but enough. I'm afraid for too big a government. But the thing is, I'm not afraid for myself. I'm afraid for others. Because it's really not, it's not happening to me, it's happening to the left. It's the powers that are created when the left gains power again. How could they be used against us and furthered against us? It's one of those, back and forths, and law upon law, and eventually we're prisoners. And, that servitude, I think, comes when you start seeing the cashless society where they want everything digital and recorded, and, they can basically take your money when the economy's not doing well. Well, economy's down. We're lowering interest rates even more when we're already in the negative. Oh, we were -5, now we're -10. They decide to take 10%. Think about that. 20%. 30%. On top of all the other taxes you already pay. And people talk about these big companies, which I think like some of the ultra corporations, what I like to call them, the extremely large corporations, international ones that dominate, that have basically helped create their own monopolies. But a lot of smaller corporations get up. Take care.
This is JJ Up Against the Wall.